Time to talk about your key assessment. So as you should already know from other readings and videos, the key assessment is a required project for this course. Not completing every part of the key assessment would mean that you would not gain credit for the course. Even if you had a C or above, you would have an I on your transcript until you completed the key assessment. So it's very important that you take this seriously and do every step that's required of it. So this is Key Assessment 4 for Literature and Children's Literature and Language, and it's a literacy enrichment portfolio. So here are the instructions. The overview for it is that you will design a comprehensive portfolio of literacy activities that it says they, it's referring to students as they is how I wrote it, but it's kind of awkward when I'm reading it. But you will implement with children at your current workplace or volunteer site. The portfolio will allow you to demonstrate your understanding of how to promote early literacy development, build family and community connections, use assessment and observations, and apply developmentally appropriate, culturally and linguistically relevant practices. The project will be adaptable based on the age group that students work with. So whether you work with infants, toddlers, preschoolers, or early elementary, you can make this your own. It will encourage students to think critically about their practice, adapt their teaching to meet diverse needs, and engage families in children's literacy development. And it meets these course objectives, and it tells a little bit about specifically how it's meeting the course objectives. So the first component of the project is activity planning. You're going to plan 4 activities. Students will develop 4 literacy-focused activities that can be adapted for the age group that they work with. These activities should reflect best practices for selecting children's literature, engaging in story time, promoting emergent literacy skills, fostering communication, and supporting early language skills. Storytime by itself will not count as an activity. We did that earlier in the semester, where we practiced storytime and you videoed yourselves and assessed yourselves. So just storytime alone does not count as an activity. The type of thing I do love to see is an activity that has a book as its anchor. So you would, you might have something before reading the book, but then you read a book to the class, so you would have story time, but then you'd have something that follows up and is connected to that story in some way. So that's a great way to use a book in an activity, but just story time is not going to count for one of your activities or for any of your activities. So each activity plan should include these things, and I go into detail here. Name and a brief description of the activity. So you're going to give a title and a clear description of the activity's goal. Does this activity look to build listening skills? Does it look to foster language development, etc.? What are you hoping to accomplish through this activity? Then the source of the activity. So if you create it, wonderful. That's great. I love seeing that. Give yourself credit for it. If you got it from a friend or a coworker, give him or her credit for it. But you do not have to come up with these activities from scratch. You can get them from somewhere else. You just have to give credit to that source so you're not stealing it. So you can do that. If you found it online, you can create a hyperlink and where I can just click on it and it takes me straight to the activity. But you do need to make sure it takes me to the activity, not to some homepage or main site. I need to go straight to the activity. Or if you got it from a set of purchased curriculum or from a book, give the name of it and then a citation for the curriculum or the book. Then you're going to link the activity to at least 4 early learning guidelines or Oklahoma academic standards. Or if you don't live in Oklahoma, you would use your own state standards. So ideally, when we're planning activities, we're planning them because we see a need that needs to be met based on prior observations and assessment. We say, okay, the kids need to be working on this. This is a skill that we need to be working on developing. So hypothetically, what skills did you see that they need to develop that this activity is going to meet? So you've got to come up with 4. At least 2 of them have to come from the language arts section of the early learning guidelines. And then you can have 2 that aren't, because maybe you're doing something that promotes literacy, but it also promotes some kind of physical development or social emotional development. So they do not all 4 have to be from language arts. You may certainly add more than 4, but you have to have at least 4. And they cannot all 4 be the same on all 4 of your activities. We want to create activities or share activities here that are meeting various standards so that we're hitting a wide variety of skills and tasks that we want the kids to be able to do. So you can't have more than one overlap across the activities, unless you have more than 4. If you're listing more than 4, you might have some overlap, but in that case, you would still need to have at least 3 that are different from the other ones. I hope that makes sense. All right, and then you're going to share the space and materials. You're going to indicate where inside the classroom, or maybe you go outside, this is taking place. Is it taking place in the circle? Is it taking place in the real kitchen? Maybe you're doing something with food. Is it taking place in the kitchen, the pretend kitchen? Is it taking place in the blocks center? Where are you doing this? Or you can take it outside, like I said. And then you're going to list any and all materials that you would need for this. That's going to include any books or props too. So if this is anchored around a book, certainly share that. If it's anchored around a book, this needs to be a book that you hold on your body and read to them, and not up on a screen. All right, and then you're going to give the procedure, and this part could take up some space. You're going to give step-by-step direction of the activity. Tips for getting started. Describe what you're going to say or do to get the children interested in the activity and let them know what they'll be doing. What might you do in the days leading up that would build excitement for this activity? Are there things that you can incorporate into the various learning centers that would build up to this somehow? What kinds of things might you talk about that's going to prepare them for this? And then how will you incorporate elements of the activity into, oh, sorry, I said that. Describe the activity. And then this is where you could do bullets or numbers maybe here if you wanted to. Describe the activity in the sequential order you will use with the children. And then once you've done that, you're going to plan for the ending of the activity. How are you going to help the children make a smooth transition to whatever comes next for them? And how might you adapt for different ages, different developmental stages? You could also include what you might do the next day that would bring this activity back to life for them in some way and come back to it. So this part's going to be kind of lengthy probably. And then you're going to share what assessment strategies you might use. Methods for observing and documenting children's engagement and learning during the activity. Share specifically what you will be observing for and how you plan to capture or document this. These should be systematic documentation strategies to gather insights into children's language and literacy development. This could include anecdotal notes, checklists, photos if that's allowed, video recordings if that's allowed, or anything else we've learned about as far as observation and assessment goes. But I do want you to be specific here. I want to, if it was, maybe you want to be working on fine motor skills and you want to see if they can successfully cut and determine what you would say was successful and how you would know. Or maybe you're working on stacking blocks and you're going to somehow, monitor how many blocks they can stack. So or whatever whatever development you would be assessing for or observing to see. Or maybe if it's social emotional, that's a little bit different. So just think about what you would assess. I'm not going to make you do that while you're performing these activities this time. But in theory, if this is a lesson plan that you create and put in your binder of lesson plans to come back to, this is something you'd want to have on that sheet is, okay, what would I assess and how would I do it? So you're going to do that 4 times for 4 different activities. Then you're going to select your 2 favorite and you are going to implement them in a classroom with children. So here it says, students will implement at least 2 of their planned activities with the children they work with. And then you're going to reflect on it. Sorry, that's why it says and reflection. Each reflection should be at least 1.5 pages double spaced and include at least 3 specific references to specific lessons learned in the class. You may reference chapter readings, articles, provided NAEYC documents from this course or others, or even videos that we've watched. You need to, when you reference those 3 things, include in-text citations and full citations at the end of each essay. So, when you talk about what went well, you might say, children responded in this way. And according to Paris, that's not one of the writers of your textbooks, that's another class, but according to author's name, children, blah, blah, blah. And then you would give a page number or something like that. Challenges, any difficulties encountered. Again, that might be somewhere that you would reference. If you can see now why it was a challenge or something like that, or you might say, I realized as the children were doing that this was not actually developmentally appropriate. And if I look at NAEYC's position statement on developmentally appropriate practices, I see, and then you would quote NAEYC. That would be a way to incorporate a source. What adaptations are you going to make? Now that you've done it once, what would you do differently next time? And then what are your next steps? Suggestions for improving the activity or extending the learning. So, sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. So for the adaptations, you're going to write about like what happened in the moment. What adaptations did you have to make in the moment based on their development, their cultural or linguistic needs that maybe you hadn't realized you were going to need to make, but you had to make in the moment. Then for your next steps is where you would say, what adaptations could I make next time? Or how could I keep this theme going? And to prove that you did this with children, you're going to include at least 5 photos for each activity. You need to be in at least 2 of them. It could show, you could have a friend take it and it could show kids behind and your face while you're doing something, reading to them or whatever. And then similar in another one. And then the other 3 can be whatever. If you include the kids' faces, make sure that you have a signed permission slip. And if your center doesn't already have that, you can get one from me. Or you can put stickers over children's faces, or you can just carefully place your camera so that you're making sure that you're getting the tops of heads looking down on them or from behind or something like that. So you're going to do that twice. Then you're going to create a family engagement piece. Students will create something like a take-home literacy kit or a family literacy guide, something that you could send home that's more than just a newsletter or just a piece of paper with your families to encourage them to support literacy at home. It could include suggested books to read together at home. It could include simple activities or conversation starters that families can use during daily routines, like at mealtime or during bath time. Tips for creating a home literacy environment, guidance on how to promote reading, writing, and listening skills at different ages. I'm allowing for some creativity here. I want to see what you come up with that you could share with them that really emphasizes the importance of literacy at home. And I want proof that you actually did not only create it, but shared it with parents. So in your template, you're going to provide documentation of what you provided to send home with families. If it's a document that you created, then you can share the document or take pictures of it, depending on what format you use or something, and share the pictures. Make sure there are enough pictures that I get to see everything and it's big enough to see. And then I want pictures of you actually standing with the parents while they hold it up, or you handing it to them or something to show that, hey, I really did share this with parents. So that is the family engagement piece. And then you'll do a final presentation. Before you do the final presentation, I'll post an assignment in Canvas where it'll be a class discussion, and you'll create a video of you basically sitting here like this, talking about your portfolio, and you'll share your screen, and you'll show things or talk about, you might show pictures, and you'll talk about your 4 activities, the 2 you implemented, what went well, what didn't, your family engagement piece, and you'll present that to the class. And then it'll be in a class discussion. So once you've posted yours, you'll go and watch at least 2 classmates' videos and respond to them about their portfolio. You want to give some honest feedback, because one of the things that you have to do once you've received feedback from your classmates, you will reflect on the feedback in your template. We're going to get to the template in a minute. What did your classmates like? What recommendations did they give? What did you learn from viewing others' portfolios that you might be able to use? So it's okay to give polite recommendations to each other. That's great. And that will help each other write this part. If you don't give recommendations to anybody, then they're going to have a hard time writing this part. So hopefully that will be fun and give you all some new ideas. So that is the project. You will present the project using this template. So everything that's in red, you're going to delete. They're just to help you have information. So you'll delete this right here. So this is your first activity. What age is it for? Is it for a large group, a small group, or individual activity? And indicate with you're going to put a check mark or an X here. And then what learning center would be used? Like we talked about before, are you on the playground? Are you at your circle time area? Where are you doing this? And then you're going to put the name and the brief description of the activity. So you'll put that under here. You'll put it in Times New Roman 12-point font. The source of the activity, like we talked about, at least 4 ELG, and here's how you'll write them. This is the section that it came from, which standard it is, the description of the standard, and then it goes like A through J on some of them, but whichever one. I just did the very first one here. Space and materials needed. There's more information on that in there. The procedure, what makes this activity developmentally appropriate for the children you're working with. I might have left these 2 things out of the instructions. You can figure out what to, I mean, if I don't get that fixed, you can, just write a little bit about what makes this step. And then same thing as what it says right here. And then assessment strategies. I know we talked about that. You're going to do that 4 times. And then here's where you're going to write your reflection after the first implementation and include your pictures. Same thing for 2. Your spot for your family engagement piece and a spot for your final presentation. And as always, with any assignment, while you're working on each section, you want to be looking at the rubric. I would have it printed out and beside me so that as I'm naming and giving a brief description, I make sure that the activity has a clear, engaging title and a well-written, specific description of its goals. And then as I'm doing the source of the activity, I'm making sure it's clearly stated with full credit given. Like sometimes there are little nuances that are listed in the rubric that aren't necessarily in the instructions. So you want to make sure that, hey, I want full credit, so I'm going to do everything in this column. Now you might look at the other columns too and think, oh, this says if this is missing, I'm going to lose points. Do I have that? So read all the columns, but be looking at the rubric when you're completing assignments to make sure you're doing everything that is asked for. So that is your key assessment for children's literature and language. I hope that you're excited to implement with children. If you are not the lead teacher in a classroom, you need to be making arrangements for how and when you can do this. And if you need me to talk to anybody at the facility you work at or volunteer at to help that happen, just let me know. But, hopefully, since they signed an agreement saying that you could be there and use the facility for class purposes, they will be very agreeable to this. All right. I think that is all I've got for now. And let me know if you have any questions.